So, in tradition, Emily asked me to ask you. Oh, I have one correction from last class. Remember the end of last class that I talked about? Wouldn't it be cool if we had a unusual retreat where we called each other's crap and said, don't put up with it for you. Like, I'm not putting it up for you, you know, and I'm going to help you get over it. And you can do the same for me. And then I tried to tell Jacqueline all excited, and she's like, no. She sent me a correction today. She says, I watched the tape. She wasn't here last week. And she goes, I didn't quite say no, I'm up for it. So I need to make that correction. I hope that was well done. So Emily's not here. So you get to do the quiz from last class. Those of you who were in last class, say hi. Yeah, there you go. And then you can get all the people that weren't in the class, and you can have a quick discussion. And this is the homeworks for today's class. So you should write the answers as I say them. If I miss them, you must ask them. And that way we can retain some more of the info. So you got like 15-20 minutes to do that. Yeah, so you're doing quiz 7 and keeping homework 8. And I'll see you in 15 minutes. Merry Christmas. And David, are you okay to read class 8?
Sure. Yes, I have my phone.
Quiz time. Easy time.
So include Alfio there, who's awesome. How you doing, Nick?
Good.
Good, me too.
Yeah, you look good.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's over there.
I'm John.
If you have refuge vows, no Dharma on the floor.
I haven't seen him in a while.
If you don't have refuge vows, no Dharma on the floor.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is great. He's at our house now.
So we need to do this.
This guy. Alright.
That's a thing.
Yeah,
Stephen
today.
Hall, that's the end.
Number 1 on the paper/modern artist. Yeah, he's very funny. Talk about it. He's like a baby dinosaur. We had a short definitive description of meditative body dinosaur. We had to put this called waves. I'm snoring so loud. The loudest, yeah, like louder than a radiator in Harlem. So I had to put the sounds of ocean waves. I'm like, yeah, he's great. I really
Kind of biting with all the growth and subtle
Please stay with me for the first.
Holy Ghost and subtle restlessness and
He's Jackson, he's coming back to us.
and all this, the growth and subtle restlessness and balance is exciting.
Okay.
That's the balance.
Yeah, the balance between agitation
And balance. Yeah.
That's the
Both of them.
expert answer.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that's what I had. I mean, I had a little bit more than that.
So,
I had
Oh.
practicing
Wait a
a
minute.
state of single point
Homework for class 8?
upon some virtuous object.
Yeah, that's
This
this
is
is
nice.
Realizing
It's
it was
a nice-
eliminate the mental
it's a nice-
restlessness and
I know, but we talked about,
the ninth stage of the
like that first one we talked about
The what?
last time.
the ninth stage of the meditation.
Right.
After you go
But I
through.
think we have to do it again then.
Yep.
It's really some virtuous object.
Sorry?
We're doing quiz 7 right now.
I don't think the object is relevant.
Give a short.
You can very introductory people stories someone meditates on having a home and stuff like that.
Practicing single
Right.
Single pointed.
on a virtuous object.
There's a real.
What was the question?
What is meditative quietude?
That has to have a holy, a noble object. That has
You weren't
to
here
be
when I
on
was
any
here.
object. It has to be.
Nor have I watched.
I think that it doesn't have to be on
I don't.
I think that we want to
Just read
list
through it. It's
I
a-
think that's probably
It's a
best.
definition.
like a debate.
Yeah.
Single-mindedness
And they're saying here
infused with the
that it
extraordinary
should.
bliss practiced ease.
But I don't know.
Due to
Geshe
a
is the one
deep,
who
single-pointed
told the story.
concentration.
It's I think you're confusing, remember he was talking about vipassana, which includes a virtuous object, versus shamatha, which is just any object.
Practiced ease. due to
Okay.
a
Like the
deep,
baseball player has
single-pointed
That's right, yeah.
concentration.
He told
Does
us.
he really?
No, not Buddhist concentration.
But Kenny Butcher once showed this guy who hit a ball and really hard ball and he hit it perfectly and they asked him afterwards how did you hit the ball, so he said in my mind I saw the ball kind of very slowly and very big and it was very easy to hit it. And Kenny Butcher had this video of how his eyes kind of open and become really stale and he says that's like single point
Slow
concentration.
replay on shamatha.
So that's definitely your mind is like that. And about, sorry?
It was like a half-hour lecture on baseball. No, he said.
Often when Ken Rinpoche was teaching, there's a lecture on baseball.
And another thing that Geshe has to say about it is the object. He said that there was a guy who meditated about having the horns. His teacher, he wanted to meditate an object, and his teacher just as a joke and meditate. Imagine you have horns. And then he came to after like a week, he then came out to the cave, he came to see him. The teacher said, I can't go out because my horn are too big. That's how you reach. Like,
I got it.
And the next one is name the meditational level
I thought the next one was
you must reach and maintain
sorry?
in order to see emptiness directly.
You just wait.
Meditation level you must reach and maintain in order to see emptiness directly.
I thought that was.
I mean,
Maybe you're right, maybe that's what
Yeah, he just said
Again, these are
they're.
like this is almost like a definition because it has a particular name, so it's from it's called the level of no lack of time.
Wow. Wish we would have been friends in
Number
school.
two.
So, yeah.
I said, I wish we would have been
Yeah.
friends in
Because I
school.
have all the answers on my computer.
you must reach
Just pop sheets.
or to see emptiness directly. I
Yeah,
love
the
it,
third
no
one is like-
lack of.
He actually
You can call it whatever you want, I don't mind.
first jhana, I think. First jhana
Yeah.
is vipassana.
Yeah, but the second one, the answer is Vipassana.
And then the next one's a definition.
Vipassana.
Short
Vipassana is when
description
somebody-
of the special
Vipassana is when you have insight and you meditate very deeply on when you go into the first jhana, which is the
What?
deep intellectual contemplation of emptiness. That is like
That's the first jhana.
Yes, you
Wisdom, which is
reach
infused
the
with
first
the
jhana. You don't have to
extraordinary
do it
bliss
with
of
vipassana. You
practice
can
ease
reach
by the
every jhana
power
just as
of
object. But when you reach the
analysis
first jhana, at least with
on the object based on a foundation of
deep
quiet.
situation to the intellectual idea of emptiness, then it's
a
like
single point of
The
concentration.
first
then
what's the
there's
answer?
and then
Me
it's
chok me, or no
great
lack
power
of
of
time. I don't
analysis
think I
of its
told you
object
guys.
based
It was in
on
the
a
reading.
foundation of quiet.
going into the first jhana
What does that
when your
mean,
mind is very
foundation?
saturated within the
I
inside
think it's
with the
Different levels of
intellectual understanding of
it's like you
emptiness.
said, it's analytical meditation in the long version.
No, seeing it directly, not
Then-
considering it logically.
No, but when you see you are saturated with the intellectual understanding of it, and you go into the first jhana, then together then you can see it directly. Then you can see it directly as an experience.
Okay.
So what is
All
it?
of these are
It's what Hector just said, which I
definitions
don't
of
always.
quiet.
No lack of
Four of
time.
these are
No,
definitions. It's the last
You know
one.
how to spell
Okay.
that?
Mhm.
Just
No
five
lack of
obstacles to a
time?
meditative state of mind. By quoting the relevant lines, of course. I got
That's the
this.
meditational level?
Quoting the relevant lines in the letter to a friend.
Yeah, that's what Hector said.
Being
But
discussion.
you may-
So, okay,
If you took
for number
meditation
one,
class, you
what
might remember some of these.
what I have that's different than the answer that we gave was
Quotes,
Not the quotes, but what they,
it's infused with extraordinary
Justice
bliss.
yeah, that's
Practice
one.
ease.
Sleepiness.
That's one.
What'd you say?
Just going back to number one, why I was thinking that it was something different was because last time he said shamatha was single mindedness that's infused with extraordinary bliss of practice.
Yes, that's the definition.
Yeah.
It has to have bliss.
Well, they call it
for to
attraction to sense
Yes,
objects.
practice ease
Really?
of extraordinary bliss.
So if you're like that kind of thing.
That
Oh,
ball
so that's
coming
why
in my mind is
if
kinda
you
sad.
get stuck, sorry, I just made a connection, I didn't mean to talk over
Go
you
on.
and yell.
Malice and anger.
That's why if you
Number
get
two.
stuck in just meditating on single pointedness, like with the breath work, it's like what John was saying. Like you go into the formless realm and then you get stuck there because you're not practicing with a virtuous object. Bam.
Formless freedom though, to get formless freedom, to get there, you have to go much beyond that, beyond shamatha. It's after you reach shamatha, there is 9 levels of form and formless freedom. At that level you have already a lot of bliss. It's before you mentioned the first jhana of the form freedom. This is all things like desirable levels of meditation. So that's actually on the levels of jhana you have it's not only that you have bliss, but you don't have it in yourself. It's like you're totally saturated. All the senses are absorbed. It's like something else.
Practice.
I want to get it off.
Okay.
The whole place? It's one room or?
It's one.
So
Are we on number 4 now?
Number 3,
You rent or you own?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give a short, definitive description of special insight, which is called Vipassana in Sanskrit and Lakshana in Tibetan.
I don't think I did this.
The wisdom which is infused with an extraordinary boast of practice eased by the power of analysis on its subject, all based upon a foundation of quietude. That's not a short, definitive description, but that's a long.
But basically, basically is when you go. Basically is when you what you said before. When you go into when you have very deep understanding of emptiness intellectually, and you are in the level of quietude together, like full quietude between bliss and no dance and agitation. And
So is it
then,
just,
What's the definition of Vipassana?
can you say shamatha with virtue?
yes, shamatha with very deep like intellectual understanding of emptiness, which is emptiness. I would say wisdom with consciousness, wisdom with very high level of meditation together. When you have if you have very high level of meditation without wisdom, you just go into jhana. If you have wisdom, you go into vipassana.
But we didn't, that isn't like the language that we used in the previous class though, so I don't know if that's
Yeah, they're very specific.
exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, we're using the specific Tibetan scriptural thing, so we can.
You want it in Tibet?
No, I just want. I think it's from the letter from. No, where's the definition from?
Joe is like.
What about just like achieving shamatha with a virtuous object? That's the
With
same.
wisdom.
Power of analysis.
When your mind is saturated with deep wisdom, it's more important than the object, because it's like seeing. Basically, it doesn't towards the object. You see the emptiness of it. You got there. It can be I don't know on Mickey Mouse, but if you see the emptiness of Mickey Mouse in samatha, you got into the
Right, but the emptiness is the wisdom object then, because like if it's just shamatha, it could be anything, and it's not necessarily infused with.
Extraordinary bliss, yes.
No, the acknowledgement of emptiness. Because shamatha is just focusing on an object.
An object. And vipassana is having that
Into the
with
emptiness of the object.
of wisdom.
And that's the virtue of it, right?
When you see the emptiness of something, that when that becomes the object of seeing, when you say.
So,
What
how
about
should we phrase it?
shamatha with analysis on emptiness?
When your mind is saturated in wisdom.
She finished
You
asking.
can say. But that's truthful, that's the same
What is
answer.
that?
But what you had written down, when you read out, Stephen, that's what you should try and remember. Yeah, because the more we go back to it, the more you'll go back to it. Each word has significance.
That wisdom which is infused, so it's already talking about that wisdom which is infused with an extraordinary bliss of practiced ease, which is referring to shamatha, by the power of analysis on its object, all based.
Founded on, and which is founded upon quietude.
Like a mindfulness consulting.
I know.
Slide down.
Most practice.
Practices with the practice of analysis.
By the power of analysis.
The power.
On its object. all based upon a foundation of quietude.
And then just read it and see what doesn't make sense to you about it, and read it, and then read it, and then read it. To yourself.
Right now?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Number 4. List the 5 obstacles to a meditative state of mind by quoting the relevant lines from the letter to a friend written by the realized being, Nagarjuna.
I couldn't find that letter in the reading.
No, but you can find that quote, I'm sure.
Well, I googled it and I got answers but not quotes.
Yeah. I gave you the list in the
Yeah.
last class. Restless desire, doubt,
Desire.
yeah, missing someone or something.
It's like busyness, it's like restless desire.
I have,
Thoughts of malice.
hold on, I'm just gonna go with what you have because this is so restless.
Restless desire.
Yeah, desire.
Thoughts of malice.
Okay.
Good
Dullness.
band name.
Of mind. Nice. What is that?
Dullness.
Down.
No, thoughts of malice.
Breeze dullness?
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
Missing someone.
I think
Huh?
Missing someone?
I might, because I don't have 4.
It's missing someone.
Missing someone?
Or something, yeah.
Missing.
Void or
something.
Missing someone or something. Missing someone?
Right.
Yeah. Not physically, but like the thought.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wisdom sword.
Desire.
We don't know.
Sword.
I guess it
On my back.
I have indecisive wavering.
And the last one I was attraction.
What?
Well, that's like restless
About your
what?
relationship.
I got my magician.
No, it's different.
Where's doubt?
Wisdom sword.
But it's not.
I can't do my bump.
Where is he living?
We'll do the homework.
Okay, so wait, what's the last one?
Actually, I have 2. One is, but I think another one now.
Is he good?
From what I've seen. Promise.
And
Yeah,
yeah, it's really good actually.
Extreme, where you're just
Oh,
like
we just said.
close to falling asleep.
So,
and you're not
who's
even
finished?
because you're-
Good. Alfie, what's the answer to number 5? I'm kidding.
There's no
That's the
five.
only one that I can.
I use it.
Do you have it?
Whatever it is.
Yes.
There's a 20th.
I want you to
So what is the fifth one?
Someone's birthday is on the 20th. Oh my god.
From
It's
last
my birthday.
class.
I think
That is
my brother's birthday.
yes, this was the
That looks like a wine bottle. It's so cool.
Like that.
The angle that I'm
What
sorry.
is it said?
That's awesome.
This is how I drink the president. I guess it's weird.
It is pretty weird.
No, yeah, I do, but that's a different story.
Tell us about it. Okay, I have a question for you all. Let's go. Ready? This is for you, Alison. Out of all that stuff you just did, okay, you did burn something into your heads, right? Imagine there's no paper, there's no cheating. What do you know out of that whole list that you did?
All of it. Wait, out of the whole quiz or
Out of the whole quiz, yeah.
Maybe the difference between shamatha and vipassana?
Tell me.
Oh.
As if
Well,
you're
I
telling
think
someone
we
and
could,
helping
like,
somebody.
covered it.
No, this is the thing. You have a, what do you call the audience when nobody's going to boo you?
Kind.
A good audience when you have a captive audience, I guess, yeah? Something.
We can still
No,
boo you.
there's a word, right?
White people. White people are really never gonna boo you.
That's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
true.
yeah. Unless you go to the
I'll boo you.
Apollo.
Unless they're drunk,
And
they're-
then you go to
Unless
the
they're
Apollo
very
and then
trash.
they're supposed to.
They're too polite. Yeah.
So what do we remember? And what can you use for your practice? Go for it.
Shamatha.
Boo!
I
I've been waiting to get booed my whole life. I've been like begging people to boo me. Nobody will do it. So, you, boo you. Shaman says single-pointed concentration with ease. Vipassana is analytical meditation with ease. So single-pointed, being able to hold your mind on one object without a sense of time, and Vipassana being able to go into some form of analysis on that object.
But on a foundation of shamatha.
On the foundation of shamatha.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, keep playing with that. That's good if you get that clear. What else?
Bliss.
Tell me.
The bliss that comes with practice ease.
Great.
And also, you've struck a balance between dullness and agitation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about the bliss. How can it be a trap?
Because sometimes it becomes the object, the ultimate
Yeah,
goal.
so we have a vow, right, to not get stuck there. It's vow to Bodhisattva. Mm-hmm. Okay, what else out of all the stuff you wrote down? What's the thing you remember from last class? The first thing that you remember from last class?
From that question,
Just in general.
meditate or you're not going to get enlightened.
Really?
No, I don't know.
He covered two types of meditation, because he's not really talking about meditation in the meditation chapter. Not like we think he's going to talk about meditation. He's never once going to tell you how to sit. He's never once going to tell you how to breathe. The closest he gets to telling you about meditation is what we're going to start today's class on, which is the idea of isolation, and what he sort of closed off last class with, which was the idea of isolation. Yeah, go into isolation. Yeah, because that covers one of the two things, states of mind that you're developing in this chapter. And the two types of meditation he's talking about are, one, a very deep meditation that can end up being analytical, but it should get you to seeing emptiness directly. Yeah, going all the way to completely go in retreat, completely separated from everything mentally and physically, and go deep into an analysis of how your reality appears. Get a deep understanding of that. That's one thing that he's covering. That's why he covered shamatha and vipassana. And then the one he talks about a state of mind that is meditative, that you should hold all day. Yeah, and remember, that's the majority of what he covered. He covered about keep in mind a meditative state all day. What are you doing on the planet? What is your point on the planet? Where are these mental afflictions appearing in your boss, in your relationships, and how do you isolate yourself from them? How do you keep view? He's saying that's all the ramble he did the last class. We're just going to finish up with that. He'll start with the finishing off the isolation part, and then he's going to throw as a wobbly. And I like that it's a small group tonight, because I get to tell you, I mean, I was in class, 150 people listening to Geshe Michael teaching this in 96, 97, I think. And it was hard to listen. And you need this thing called Kelwa. Do you remember Kelwa? Do you know what Kelwa is? Kelwa? It's like goodness. You need to have some goodness to actually hear it. And I remember he said, if you have, what he's going to say tonight is so radical for a human mind that unless you have a storehouse of Kelwa, of this kind of goodness, it just might go over you. You might not hear it. But if you have Kelwa, it should floor you. You should go. And I remember him saying this thing, and that just kept my attention all night, going, I want to hear it. I want to have Kelwa. I didn't. Right? I'm like, But it stuck with me, and hearing it again to try and share it with you just brought me back to the significance of this class and how much you use this information for the rest of your career as an investigator of reality. I don't even want to call you Buddhists. yeah, as an investigator of how your world appears. So it's a fundamental idea on par with seeing emptiness directly. Yeah, and it's like, if you're not on it, and he said most of us are somewhere in between, having like no Kelwar at all, having a normal human conception of things. I'm like, oh, that's just an idea. You know, then you go back to your phone, or really understanding the impact of this, of Master Shantideva's words in this. So I'm excited to share it with you. But before we get there, we'll cover this, the end of the isolation thing. You do get a feeling, remember in the story of the Bodhisattva Charavatara, as he recited it, that I think in chapter 9 he started floating off, yeah?
Yes.
You begin to feel here that conceptually he's already leaving us as normal humans. Like if a normal human is listening to this, you're like, what are you saying, really? Yeah, like some of you might be familiar with some of the concepts because you've heard them. And that is like a karmic millionaire to actually hear these ideas as the source of, as a fundamental part of getting enlightened. Yeah. Also, want to clarify, whenever he says person, you know, and the Tibetan word for person is a sentient, so it includes bugs, animals, and it's not a person, it's a being. Yeah. So, so put up your hand if you can really say that there was an instance in your life where you fell in love with another person so much, doesn't matter how old you were, that you just didn't care about yourself, you just wanted them. Yeah, like even if it was a millisecond, you know, and for me, when that has happened, sometime later, the humanness of our realm starts protecting something or withdrawing or relabeling or something, but it doesn't deny the fact that you got to touch that. Yeah. So I want you to think of that. Try and think of tonight's class, or as if you can hold that and grow that, and it can't diminish without the fear of it diminishing, because it does in this realm. So he's going to talk about how to do that and not have it disappear like we are so used to. That's why we recoil when we have this bounce connection with love or likeness or so on. You also have this feeling, if you've ever gone to see somebody in a hospital who's badly hurt, and you might or might not know them, it doesn't matter, and you see them and you have this instant burst of, I want you to be okay. I want your happiness. And then, you know, our stupid thinking will pull back and go, oh, but it's sort of yucky to look at, or it's uncomfortable, or whatever. This boundary we're going to play with tonight, and he's going to play with it tonight as well. So the two types of isolation that he talked about before were the mental isolation and the physical isolation, right? And in a sense, you're isolating yourself mentally from your afflictions, right? From having to deal with anger and jealousy and all this other stuff by operating and thinking and being in your world and putting yourself in situations where you can work against those things. A more subtle way of looking at your mental isolation, as he talks about it, is you begin to isolate yourself from seeing the world as self-existent. You begin to isolate your mind from the habitual humanness of seeing things as existing the way they appear only. They do appear that way, and they do exist that way, and you understand them. But mental isolation reserves that identity to some degree and says, that's fine, I have to deal with that. I have to deal with this nominal reality. But behind that is an infinity because it's empty. Yeah? Infinity of possibilities. So part of the mental isolation you're developing as a muscle is isolation from your mental afflictions by playing this thing with them until they don't get you. Your jealousy, your anger, your hatred, your all of them. And more fundamentally, more subtly, your view of things as self-existence are inherent. That we have these things, you're that. My mind is telling me that. And then through analysis, through meditation, we know that can't be the case. It can't be that something is only that. Yes, it's appearing that way to me. Yes, it's existing that way to me. Yes, it functions that way for me. It's not that though. It's not the thing I'm experiencing. It is something more. It is infinitely more. It is only the thing that the different perceivers will experience it. It is empty of that feature. So then he goes, yeah, but you should also, once you're working with those things, go and get some physical isolation, because that isolation will serve you deeper and deeper, right? And what kind of place is he talking about? Are you ready, David?
This is 8.
This is Contemplation 13, class 8. Yeah. Where to devote yourself in meditation. So your mind should be at Nalanda University, India, 700 AD, thousands of monastics listening to this for the very first time and floored at the impact of this in their lives.
We spend our days in gentle walks and thoughts of helping others. Here in the silent peace of the forest, flowing in soft breezes. We live doing as we please in our mansion of a wide flat rock, cool with the touch of moonlight and sandalwood scent of the holy, living deep within the woods of peacefulness, completely emptied of conflict and the afflictions. We live where we please, as long as we like, in abandoned houses or caves, or else at the foot of a tree. We've given up the suffering of owning and protecting things. Carefree we live, relying on nothing.
So he's now summarizing the traditional instruction on what kind of place to meditate. I think we did this on ACI 3, the whole list of the kind of place, how far away from people, what kind of environment it should be, comfortable and the rest. But then he's got some other things in here. When he's saying moonlight and sandalwood scent of the holy, yeah, touch of moonlight and sandalwood scent of the holy, he's saying that you should try and do retreat in a place where other holy beings have done retreat before, and they, through their virtue, they leave their stink in the cave, they leave their scent, their beautiful scent in the places that they've meditated. And for those of you who have been to Nepal with us, and we've gone to Maratika, where Padmasambhava meditated and the rest, there's a whole energy around those caves. And for every other cave you go to where holy beings have been and practiced and got insight and the rest. So he's saying, and it makes sense from a karmic point of view, you connect to that intellectually by just being in the presence. It's not that there's something self-existent in the cave, but that there's something nominal for you to engage with. If you have a conception that these beings were there, then in your mind a perfect being appeared in this room, did these amazing things, and what power does that give you as you're sitting there in that space, right? So he's saying, make sure you choose that kind of place. When he's saying peacefulness somewhere, I can't remember, where did he say peacefulness? Anyway, he's talking about the peace between dullness and agitation. He's talking about that peace, and that's in the commentary. You know, if you want to have really good dullness, you eat a lot before you meditate. or you make sure you eat the wrong kinds of food if you really want to get good dhammas. And if you want to get really good agitation, you commit to too many things and you are forever busy and your mind is racing, and you live in New York and you have 17 iPhones and 25 apps and cat applications and the rest. Yeah. And then this, I mean, it was beautiful to hear him say, you know, we just live where we please. We live where we please. We just roam around and we abandon houses and caves. I mean, who really liked the visual of that? Like for me, it was like magic. Please, I want to go there. Now, there's a freedom to know. And I've only had this a couple of times in my life. And once before I was a practicing Buddhist, and later when I was, where you go somewhere on the planet that nobody knows you're at. Nobody knows you're there. And you're by yourself. And you could die and nobody would know. Nobody would find you for days. For days. If you climb the ledge and you go up there and you rest up there, and as much as there's this fear of disconnecting, there is this bliss of being separated as well, of going, whoa, it's me and this thing, it's me and this. And what happens there is all these worries drop. He'll get to it later, he'll talk about the stuff that happens in the first few days, first few weeks of that kind of isolation and meditation. Your mind just begins to shift and do something else, and then it's ripe for something. And he's going to talk about that something. Yeah. So then he says at the end, we have given up the suffering of owning and protecting. You know, like, who's ever wanted a better job? Yeah. Good. Who's ever gotten a better job? Right? So when you haven't got the job, I know this, I've gone to so many promotions in my life, it's hilarious. You know, you see the office over there in the corner, that office is going to be mine. You know, or the title. I'm going to have the title, or I'm going to have the chair, or whatever the stupid thing is. Yeah, you're going to be that thing, and part of you is like excited, and rightly so. If you're happy about it, no problem. Yeah, but there is this energy towards getting it. Yeah, and it's a kind of suffering. You know, you do stupid things to get there. And then, okay, let's say that wasn't a bad thing. Let's say you got it, right? And then you got it. And then all you're doing is, I don't want anyone else to get this chair. And nobody else should get this kind of promotion. You know, like you don't even rest in the, I've got the job. You know, it's like, shit, other people want that same job. Or something. And at some point it hits you and it just becomes this, I don't know, it's like a wobbly wheel with two heavy things inside it. It keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. And that's what he's talking about. He's talking about, we've given that up because we're on our own. There's no stupid chair to get. There's no thing to show off your meditative skills. It's just you and you. And you know, that's, I love Dr. Seuss's all over the places you go, because at some point he goes, and you will succeed, 98.75% guaranteed, except when you don't. Because sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll lose because you'll play lonely games too, games you can't win because you play against you. Yeah, and so he's like, you're on your own up there. And this isolation just opens up a whole new world. It's easy to be competitive here and to be in this mode. We should piss off every now and then. And in Master Shantideva fashion, he says, you know, don't go off and do a 3-year retreat from no experience. Start with carrots and potatoes, like giving. Start slow. Do a week, you know, do 2 weeks. Then a year later, do 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you know, and always with some help, because you can get in trouble too. Yeah. So anyway, that's what that is. Let's go to the next one. And then, yeah, we'll talk about the... So let's go back. Just imagine you were there.
Think of these considerations, and others as well. Contemplate the benefits of isolation. Put an end to useless thoughts and meditate upon the wish for enlightenment. From the very beginning, exert yourself in the practice of treating others and yourself the same. When the happiness and the sufferings are the same, then you will care for all just as you do yourself.
So he starts off by saying, hey, start getting rid of your useless thoughts, right? So I've got a ton of friends, and so do you, who did this 3-year retreat. Yeah. I asked them lots of them, what was it like? And to my surprise, a couple of them said they were so frenzied to finish the house and get all the things and say goodbye to their friends. And when they locked the door, they had this like, what am I supposed to do now? Like I'm here for 3 years. What do I meditate on? Like, what do I do? Like even though you had practices and you had things, the first thing that hits you is that all the noise drops off. There is no iPhone to check. There is no dinner to go to. There is no friend who's going to pop by. There's no cleaning the foyer. There's no, well, I was thinking about my shitty apartment. There's none of those distractions that keep us busy, occupied. There's no job to go to. There's no neighbor to fight with. There's no sister to call. There's no shopping. All the useless distractions, all the things that we spend most of our days doing disappear. And Master Shantideva says, when that gap appears, when you realize they've just disappeared and you have this gap and you go, now what do I do? He says the first thing you should do is you should generate the wish. You should think of others like yourself. The first thing you should do, you should consider others like yourself. And that's going to be the theme for the rest of the chapter. And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the chapter. He says, fill up that gap, realizing there is no difference between you and others. And then he'll go through the natural objections of that statement. And if you go up, you'll hear it. Okay, you'll hear what he's talking about. So I'll ask you to repeat some Tibetan words, because this is a wood imprint. So say Dakshin Yampa. Dakshin Yampa. Dakshin Yampa. So remember duck? Duck, D-A-K. Duck. Not duck. Duck. No. Duck is me. Self, me. Duck. Remember the self-existent duck? Yeah. Shen is others, and Yampa is exactly the same. Not partially the same, not a little bit the same. Precisely the same. Yeah? So he's saying, Master Shantideva says, generate the wish, and from the very beginning exert yourself in the practice of treating others as yourself. Dakshin Yampa. Read the next one, and then we'll go into what that actually means.
There are many separate parts, the hands and all the rest, but we dearly care for them all as a single body. Just so shall I work for the happiness of every different being, treating all as equal, all as one, thinking of their joy and pain as if it were my own.
So Master Shantideva is sort of addressing a pre-objection. Is like, well, hold on a minute. If I think of others as myself, it's almost impossible. I mean, especially from a Buddhist point of view, there's not just this world. Others include not just humans. There's animals and other realms we cannot see. I mean, it'd be crazy to think that this is the only sentient place on the universe, right? So it's like he's addressing the objection of like, might sound lovely, but the reality of me having to take care of as many feet as there are in the room, as if it were my own feet, that's a problem. But that's hard to do, especially if you consider all sentient life. Like, that's impossible. How can you do that? Yeah? And he sort of preempts that by saying, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You're thinking about it the wrong way. It's like saying that your fingers are not you. I mean, he's doing the argument of one and many, for those of you who remember that argument. Yeah? The one and many. Is this one thing or two things? A finger? Is a finger a hand? Is a hand full of fingers? Is that one thing or many things? And then how can I say that's me? And he's going to begin to argue, and see if you can get this, that the perception we have about ourselves finishing at the end of our skin is fairly arbitrary. That a chunk of it is forced upon us by our karma because we are in the human realm and experience this kind of separation. Yeah? But then a part of it, like the fingers being a hand, being a part of my body, is it a hand or is it my body? Is it me or is it a finger? Yeah? Is a decision that we decide to perceive things in a certain way. And if you think that you finish at the end of your skin, then have you ever gotten upset when someone attacks something that you think belongs to you? Right? All of a sudden you extend to that thing, right? So if someone came and took my laptop, which is probably the most dear thing at the moment in my life, because I'm always on it after Stephen. Just say that, not.
Alright.
What's the price of admission? But you see, we extend our notions of ourselves. It's sort of plastic. It's sort of fluid, right? Sometimes someone might say or do something towards another person or towards a pet or towards something, and you'd get all upset, and another person will not be all upset. So their extension of themselves is a little bit further in that regard than mine. Other people I don't care if you cut my hair anymore. I used to. My extension of me originally was at the end of my hair. Now it's sort of, I don't care. So I don't associate that to be me. He's playing here with the idea of where do you begin and where do you end. And he says that you can, even the fact that you do perceive each other as separate, that we do perceive each other as separate, as forced upon us through our karmic experience, that karma is changeable. That we don't have to be forced to see that. That you do in a human realm. But to go beyond a human realm might mean not having that boundary. And that's important to see if you can catch. To go beyond a human realm might mean not having that boundary. That might be the key, or a key, to being out of that realm. Mm-hmm. Let me go and then hold it. Hold whatever you're thinking and feeling. Yeah? So that's the big question tonight. Where do you begin? Where do you end? And he's saying you must think of others as yourself if you want to get out of the cyclic suffering. If you want to generate bodhicitta, you need to think of yourself as others. Same thing. You and others are the same. And he's going to give you some logical arguments. And our job is to figure out how we can internalize that within our level. Remember, there's two instructions always from Master Shantideva. Begin with carrots and potatoes. Begin with whatever practice, at whatever capacity you've got, and try and expand it. And from the Buddha himself, you're prohibited from doing anything that goes beyond your capacity, especially if you're going to regret it later. Yeah, because that's a greater negativity to your consciousness than not doing it in the first place. right? So remembering those two restrictions, he's inviting you to stretch the boundary of who you are to include others, which includes bugs and subway people and annoying bosses and crazy old family members. Yeah? Do you want to read the next part and then I'll cover... Actually, no. No objections on that? I remember one person had a very strong objection in the 97 class.
What was it?
No objections on that?
No, Your Honor.
No? Okay. Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel normal? Feel good? Sounds a good idea? Go on.
I mean, it gets really overwhelming
Why?
because of what you said in the beginning of like having to care for the smelly people on the subway that I don't know what
Yeah.
to do there.
Yeah. Cool.
Because I don't know what to do.
Right.
And then,
David's probably going to have the one I want to have.
You asked.
Yeah. Oh, I want it. I mean,
Yeah.
we should have some objections. I mean, Ken Rinpoche used to say, if you're not asking any questions, either you know everything, or you're just drinking it all going, oh yeah, I believe that, which is not pretty Buddhist of you. So you should have some objections. And it should feel unnatural in a good way to hear these words. Yeah?
Are we at that question asking stage though?
No, I just asked you if there's any objections to what I just said.
Okay. No. Okay.
No? And I'll tell you, do you have one?
I sometimes think if you really have the highest understanding of emptiness, isn't it sort of inane to look at others as even beings?
Right, right. Cool. So if you're developing it from an emptiness point of view, you're saying, what difference is there? I mean, there is no difference, right? Beautiful. That's not really an objection.
Yeah, you totally.
That's
treated
just a
me.
smart ass comment. No, that's actually beautiful. That's actually beautiful. The objection that came up in the 90s and everyone went, oh, is an obvious one. It's like, they're not me. I don't feel their pain. You know, like if someone punches David in the face, you know, it's like, if someone punches me in the face, I'm like, ah! If someone punches David in the face, it's like, oh, it's a bad.
Or we're talking about an isolation where they're only your thoughts.
What do you mean?
He's referring to being in isolation where you just have...
No, we've moved beyond isolation. He's gone, what should you do in isolation? You should start thinking of other people and treating of other people and your whole practice. And I said, the rest of the chapter is going to be about this experience of seeing others as yourself.
But you do feel the pain. I mean, we're all different, but when you go, at least when I went and watched 12 Years as a Slave, I wept my friggin' eyes out for 2.5 hours. And it has something to just watching pictures.
Empathy. What about sensation? The objection was, I don't feel the sensation of pain.
But some of us do.
But there were people in 12 Years a Slave who did those things who didn't feel the pain.
Who didn't feel pain.
So,
sure.
Yeah,
it's not unanimous.
Yeah.
But
What you said. You don't feel it. It's just...
But I think some of us do.
Even if certain beings do feel that, the nominal experience seems to be that, yeah, that's true. I don't feel the same sensation that you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question specifically? Do we object to what? What was it?
Of the idea to treat other beings like yourself, to see yourself as the same, exactly the same, not partly the same, exactly the same, because that was the thing as others.
So what would the objection be? It's but it's incomplete.
What do you mean?
Well, he's making a statement to do this. So to me, it's like, okay, why?
Right,
In other words, it really can't be an objection yet because...
Oh, it's like, well, I can't be the same as the others because I don't feel their pain. You know, I don't.
Well, but presumably the reason you do it is in the most selfish reason possible, because you don't want to suffer like another person. If you empathize, you learn the lessons of how to prevent.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Right?
But we're talking. You've got some training.
No, but more than that, that's common sense. That's how our parents brought us up. be sympathetic and empathetic towards others because you too could be there. Wasn't that part of a normal?
My parents suck.
No.
Really?
I mean,
No,
not
yeah,
for
but the
me.
world doesn't
I get,
function that
I
But
hear what
I
you're
did,
saying.
and I have to
No.
speak about
But
myself.
there's a
Yeah.
difference between feeling
Come on, say it.
compassion
Yeah.
and seeing others
all kinds.
as you.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
right, great, nice. Paul's got it. Go.
Can I?
Mhm.
Okay. And this is something I texted you about earlier, like last week. Because oftentimes when I do pass someone who is deeply suffering, I feel it pass through my body,
Mhm.
this suffering. And I asked you, what is the karma that allows me to experience that?
Mhm.
And when I got off because I love doing subway meditations, I got off the subway today, stepped up out of the stairs, and I saw every person around me as being like one neuron in a mass of neurons where we were all a collection of one. And it was beautiful, to see that.
Mm.
So I'm just wondering, like, especially with the whole karma thing, if you're on the Bodhisattva path, what is the karma of experiencing another person's suffering? And how can you want to stop it if you don't experience it?
Just
It still sounds like compassion now.
Razor shield.
yeah, cool, the shield. How does the Buddha experience the suffering of samsara? Do they experience it as suffering?
Well, he doesn't if he's...
No.
Like a mother watches a child.
No.
But with suffering?
No.
It can't be with suffering.
It's not with suffering.
It can't be with suffering, right? And they say it's like a bliss. They have a kind of bliss sensation. Yeah.
They would die too. I mean,
But they
it's
still
not the suffering of every
recognize
single being in
this
every
metaphor that he's making, like an enlightened being would recognize this metaphor and would actually perceive things in this way as if we were all one body. And so my response to that objection would be, does the eye feel the toenails pain? Like, you don't have to feel that person's pain to be connected to them. And so the way that I see it, everyone is a body, is more like how the karma ricochets. So like if you act on someone in one way, if we weren't connected, you wouldn't get that back. Like you wouldn't have a karmic ripening after acting on someone, like after or something. You wouldn't get it back if we weren't connected.
How do you get it back though?
I don't know yet because I haven't received that. I just feel like
It's interesting to me to hear you talk about these things. Okay, let's go to the next one and let's let Master Shantideva guide us because he's now going to answer that objection. It was beautiful in class in the 90s because someone brought the objection before we got to this verse. Yeah.
Suppose you object. Suppose you object and say that your pain never hurts the body of another. Even so, your pain is something you can't bear for just one reason. You are grasping to yourself. Just so, even though it's true that sufferings others feel never come and strike you, still it is your suffering, since you'll find them hard to bear once you grasp to yourself.
I know that's a really difficult one.
It's like,
He's basically saying we have all a threshold on pain or discomfort or whatever. And at some point when someone's talking to you in a certain way or when someone's punching you in a certain way or whatever it is, at some point you go, that's it, that's the limit. At that point, I'm not taking it anymore, right? And you do it to whatever that boundary of self is for you. Like you might get up, you can borrow my bank account 5 times, but the 6th time, that's it. You've just reached that boundary for me. And that me got hurt. Yeah, I'm protecting it now. Yeah? So we have that boundary for ourselves and for our pain. And he's saying, fair enough. In the practice of treating others as yourself, as if they are exactly you, in this holy, holy practice of thinking every other being as you, and wanting exactly what you want for you for them. Yeah? You're right, you can't feel their pain. But you can decide that you will not put up with their pain. That you can do. He's like, the karmic consequences that landed you here force you to see this separation. That's just karma ripening. Yeah? That's flexible. You might not fix it right now. But conceptually, you can say, I understand that there is this perceptual difference between us and them. But the fact that they're hurting, like I am hurting, that they feel pain, like I feel pain, I can decide that's my limit of accepting it. I will act upon it. I will decide that's not good enough. If I see another person with depression or with sadness or with anger or with financial difficulties or with a broken body or whatever it is, and then he'll go deeper into the proofs of why that's important. You do begin to feel Master Shantideva leaving the Western conception of me, everything's focused on my well-being, my goodness, and if I take care of me, the world is going to be perfect. He's saying, destroy that boundary. That can only ever keep you here. You want to go beyond here, you have to break the boundary that shows this false division between you and other. Intellectually understanding, and it only works because of emptiness and your ricochet effect that you were saying on karma. You're only ever perceiving them in your mind. So to have an instance of suffering in your mind, designated as another or not, is in you. Like you say, you feel it. Where else is it?
If everything is a projection of my karma that I perceive,
And you perceive, and then it is you.
I've created that suffering being, which is coming from my karma.
It's only appearing to you. And if everything is empty like this thing, then another being might perceive that being not a suffering being. So whose responsibility is it to decide that that's not going to happen anymore? But the perceiver, right? Chew on that for a second. We'll do we'll do the logical proofs when we come back. Have a 10-minute break. Yeah? He'll give you 2 logical proofs at the next thing. When we come back. Cool?